Hey, and welcome to another episode of Digital Noir Presents, a podcast loosely based around life in a digital studio. I'm your host, Sam, and I've got my co-host with me, Nicoles Background.
Hi.
And today we're having a chat to Nicole Henderson, who's got a really cool local startup here in Adelaide called Playt. Enjoy. Oh, cheers for coming down, Nicole. It's great to have you here.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
Not a
great
problem
to
at all.
be here.
How you doing, Nick?
Good, thank you. How are you guys?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Cool. So obviously wanted to have a chat today about Playt, the startup that you're running.
Yep.
But also just keen to hear about sort of life in general in the startup world and
Yeah, the crazy world of startups. Yeah.
But I suppose to kick off, let us know a bit more about what Playt is.
Sure, yeah. Playt is, well, we're essentially a food technology company. We're basically focused on creating shopping lists from recipes, so creating shopping experiences directly from recipes themselves. So we use artificial intelligence technology to automatically convert the ingredients in a recipe into a customizable shopping list. So we're also integrating with Woolworths. So Woolworths will deliver the ingredients direct to the consumer, so by home delivery, or they can pick it up from their local store.
Cool.
Oh.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
That's the very beginning of what we sort of see with Playt.
Nice. I mean, I've heard the sort of the story, the founder's story of how you came up with the idea, and obviously the same idea was sort of happening in tandem in Adelaide, and you've teamed up with Jason to kick it off.
Yeah, pretty crazy actually. It was about 3.5 years ago, so I guess for me it's this idea has been sort of bubbling away for that amount of time. So it really started with a problem that I was solving for myself. I used to like to do a cook up at the beginning of the week. Always like to cook with recipes. I'm not the best cook, so always following a guide is the best way. But combined with working, really long hours in Sydney, and the battle to the supermarket because Sydney is really busy and it's not always easy just to get to a supermarket. I had, on numerous occasions, forgotten ingredients for my shopping list, and it's a bit of a pain while you're, trying to put something together and you're tearing your hair out, just thinking, surely with technology these days there has to be a better way. So that was before a lot of the, food boxes came up, and I just thought, I just want to be able to find any recipe I want, click a button and have the ingredients delivered to my door. So that's what sort of started the idea for me. And then I went on a bit of a journey of finding and doing a lot of research about the industry and the market through a university degree, which is focused on innovation and entrepreneurship. So I really use that as a platform to kind of build my network in the industry. And that's when I was introduced to Jason, my business partner, who was working on a similar thing, but his idea was to take a photo of the ingredients in a cookbook and then convert the ingredients into a shopping list. And he was already talking to Woolworths. So yeah, it was an ideal partnership, really.
Oh, wow.
When you had the idea, and obviously, so you went into a university sort of course to, I suppose, learn more about how do you get something like this up off the ground. But you didn't have any...
I had no idea. I mean, I grew up in Canberra and worked for government. I worked, for financial services and investment companies. So my background was very much in government and corporate, and I knew no one who, had started, a business like this, or knew not really anything about tech or even marketing at that point, really. So I just kind of had this idea, and I didn't have a degree at the time anyway, and I thought, well, it'd be good to tick that box. I may as well do it something that I'm interested in and passionate about, and I'll see where it takes me. And so I guess I just stayed pretty focused on it over the 2 years that I was studying, and hustled my way around Adelaide and tried to figure out how to make this happen. And to start, I guess I was contemplating the idea of the meal boxes, but requires huge amounts of capital to do that sort of thing, because they basically, create the entire, logistical system. And
the logistics becomes very
a nightmare,
time-consuming and expensive.
Absolutely. So when I kind of found out that there was the technology available to integrate with the supermarkets who were already doing the logistical aspect, that seemed like the sort of feasible solution for me to kind of go down, and also addressed my primary concern about, being able to choose what you want to eat.
Yep.
I had sort of experimented with the meal boxes and found it quite frustrating because, you know, I have specific dietary requirements that I couldn't meet, using the meal boxes because you'd basically get given food to eat for the week, and that just didn't really suit me. And I know there's thousands of people out there who, you know, share the same sort of sentiment because people have issues with foods, and we have our own different tastes and preferences. And
it doesn't give you much room to experiment then as well. It's sort of, you know,
absolutely.
What's the American one? Blue Apron?
Yeah, Blue Apron.
Blue Apron,
one,
and
that's the biggest one.
HelloFresh.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're sort of, I mean, they're
Amazon
good for, I suppose, that next level person that really doesn't want to think about it at all.
Exactly.
But if you like browsing recipes and you sort of want to try something out, then...
Exactly. So that sort of suited my profile, and that's why I became pretty passionate about it. And when I found out, you know, that we could actually generate a shopping list directly from a cookbook, I was pretty blown away by that. Woolies was also pretty blown away by that as well. So
cool.
That's sort of what enabled us to get to that next stage to work with Woolies, you know, in partnership with them. So we have an exclusive contract with them. So looking forward to kind of seeing where that takes us and working with Woolies to kind of start to grow the business here in Australia.
And so what stage is it at right now?
Pretty early stage. So we've done a bit of a soft launch within our network. So we're sort of testing our core technology, which is the online technology at the moment.
Sure.
So working on refining the process of, interpreting the ingredients and coming up with, the appropriate items to match those ingredients, because you have to look at things like quantities and treatments of the ingredients, as well as the preparation of the ingredient to determine what product might best suit that ingredient. So there's a lot of work that's involved in that,
still tweaking.
It'll be be a continuous thing that we work with, because obviously we're also dependent on Woolies as well, and the information that we get from Woolworths to be able to refine and optimize those results.
So with those results, like let's say I'm cooking a curry or something and I get fish sauce, and Woolies have got 7 SKUs of fish sauce on the shelf. How does it know which one to pick and quantity? Is it giving you one at the moment, or is it? So it will return the most, I think at the moment we're using the most suited sort of match. So it'll just be probably the most popular one. Yeah, sure.
Which isn't always the best result.
Sure.
So we're trying to work on how we kind of get around that and create an even more tailored or customized search result so that we get the better results. So over time, though, that will enable us to start working with brands so that we can actually sponsor search results for brands. So if you're cooking, a cake and, we have a sponsorship arrangement with White Wings, for example, we'll always get their products matched first. So at the moment, it's sort of more by popularity than by brand.
Okay.
So something that I think is quite interesting, so when we basically at a pre-launch stage still, and you're saying sort of 3.5 years ago you've had the idea and you've gone and done a university degree around it. I mean, these kind of ideas don't happen overnight, do they?
Absolutely. And you kind of just all of a sudden hear, these ideas and these success stories, and you kind of assume that it's just something that's just happened overnight. But, you really don't know the journey that has gone on to get to that point in time. And, when you look further into it and hear the stories of founders, you kind of realize that it really is like a 10-year journey, usually at least.
Sure.
And there's usually, failures and issues and, nightmares along the way.
And I'm sure you've had a few of those.
Yeah, absolutely. You do question your sanity quite a lot. But, when you get... then you kind of go on this, you have this big explosion of, successes and, big wins. We won a $50,000 competitive grant, which really helped us in the early days. And that also helps with, media opportunities. So lots of different things spiral out of those opportunities. It's just a matter of kind of putting yourself out there and being open to any of the opportunities that can help you move forward.
And you really have to do that, don't you? Like, I think a lot of founders don't appreciate, one, how much time they're going to have to put in, how much sweat they're going to have to put in, and also sort of going outside of the box and trying new things and being able to pivot too. So things might change, and
exactly.
the product you're working on might not be what you had initially anticipated?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I really had quite a clear vision from the very beginning as to what I thought the product should look like, because I was thinking about it from the end user's perspective.
Sure.
But as we sort of started along the journey, and when we started planning how to kind of build the tech, and you kind of realize that any feature that there is in this tech costs time and money. And so you really have to strip it bare and work out what is the core fundamental tech that you need to get it off the ground and get people using it, and then kind of add the list of features that you want from there. So it's kind of coming back to what I wanted it to do, but it's taken probably about 7 or 8 months of like development time to get it there. So, and we'll be looking at launching hopefully towards the end of February more publicly, so for consumer use.
Cool, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So that's a big 2018 for
Absolutely.
For Playt.
Yeah, lots of cool things in mind in terms of what we do and how we get there, but at this stage it's just sort of refining the tech and making it a little bit better and more usable for consumer consumption.
Has the soft launch been important in terms of getting out there and in some people's hands and actually using it?
Yeah, absolutely. And just, testing your assumptions on what's important for the user as well.
Sure.
I do have a very consumer-focused lens when I look at the tech, whereas my business partners obviously look at it from the more technical side. So we have had a pretty good balance, within the team. But certainly, you can only, assume certain things are important to people and different things are important to different people. So, going out and getting that feedback has important in terms of how we prioritise our development.
Because people often say that you should have sort of a tech co-founder, but I think it's actually really important to have someone that's consumer focused too, because I've seen startups which have been too tech oriented and then sort of forgotten what the actual end goal is, which is to make users happier.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, that's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to, I guess for me, just learning that tech's not that easy, and all too often as a consumer we try something and it seems like it should be easy. So from my point of view it's been like, oh yeah, this should be easy, and the tech guys are like, oh, it's not actually that easy, and you kind of underestimate how hard it is to get there, really.
And ultimately though, the tech is just a tool to solve the problem, right? So
yeah, that's right.
I guess the idea that solves the problem is probably more important than
absolutely
the tech in the end.
Absolutely. And sometimes refining the problem, as simple as it may be, and trying to, articulate what the problem actually is, can be a challenge as well as a founder, and sort of refining the way that you communicate and explain your business, and working out, who your customer is versus, who your actual user is also a bit of a challenge. But, we've identified, I guess a couple of different segments in terms of, who the tech can benefit. And certainly it goes past just being something that makes it easy for people to cook meals. So that's sort of the consumer side. But also for recipe publishers. So our solution is very much based on aggregating existing recipe content that is online and being able to drive traffic back to those sites. So we actually view the entire recipe on our platform, but we just generate the shopping list outside of that within Playt, and then we store the recipes on their Playt profile. So then when the ingredients get delivered to the consumer, they can just go back to Playt, click on the recipe, it takes them back to the recipe source. So
cool.
So very much sort of that driving value for recipe publishers. It's very difficult for them to monetize content. So we're looking at ways that we can, as we build, our user base, share some revenue with the publishers as well.
Do they have to come on board, or is this sort of API publicly available for the recipe publishers? Yeah, so initially we'll probably start working with local publishers, and we'll try to work with them to bring them on board. So until we sort of work out a process that is probably more open. Sure.
But we are looking at kind of working with publishers on a bit of a subscription basis as well, where we'll be able to embed some a button essentially onto their website that so that, you know, any of their audience who visits their site, you know, they can see a button that says, you know, don't have time to go to the store, get this delivered tomorrow, kind of thing.
Okay.
And that's how we'll then be able to share revenue with the publishers. So that will definitely require them to kind of subscribe.
Sure. How important was it getting sort of a big like corporate partner or commercial partner like Woolies on board early? Yeah,
fundamental. Yeah. Our entire business model really depends on that, so that we're not, you know, creating that entire logistics network. So we really wanted to try and remain a tech company, as opposed to a logistics company or a online supermarket. Okay. So yeah, it allows us to kind of fit into the ecosystem as that tech sort of solution. And my passion is very much around, you know, nutrition and eating healthy. So I'm keen to look at exploring, you know, that industry and how we can provide the technology that enables them to deliver, you know, meal plans and suitable recipes to their clients that they can easily kind of prepare at home. So yeah, that's a little bit further down the line, because obviously we have to refine the tech for it to be, you know, dietary specific as well. But yeah, definitely something that I'm keen to sort of focus on.
From a marketing angle, I mean, it's a nice place to be. Playt in general, I mean, food's a fun place to talk to people, and people are passionate about it. So
absolutely,
there's a lot you can talk about. Yeah,
it's true. I love food. I love wine. I love lots of, you know, I love the market. So it has definitely been a great industry to be in, and just certainly just talking to people and how passionate they are about food, and you know helping people to recreate food experiences and the food that they're delivering. It's great.
Have you had a look at it yet, Nick?
I have, actually. Also, I noticed that it's a website at the moment. So was there a reason that you didn't actually create an app, like a native app?
So we started mobile web. We were going to start with an app. Yeah. But when I did some analysis of our target market, spoke to a couple of friends, and I kind of realized that to go straight to an app, we're losing a huge part of our target market. So I imagine that people can be at work on their desktop, and they're kind of browsing for information, and they think, crap, I haven't, bought anything for dinner tonight, and they can use their desktop to order their dinner for tonight. Because if they order by 11 a.m, they can pick it up from their local store or have it delivered that evening. Okay. So I think if we were to go app first and not have that web presence, we would have lost a huge market. And the way I kind of see apps is, I only really download them if I've used it, I've used their online already, and I think that, I'll get a better experience from the app. So, sure. Yeah.
And I think, it's often a good way to go web first. You have to build the back end anyway, and you're going to need a desktop version. So.
Exactly. Well, we've designed the entire system to be, it's like an app experience on the mobile. So it kind of feels like an app, right. But it's built on the web. Okay. So we can do pretty much everything we need it to do using the web interface.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And coming over from Canberra originally, and then Sydney to Adelaide, and being sort of in the sort of startup ecosystem here, how does it compare to Sydney? I know you weren't sort of.
I wasn't really
in the same industry,
in that industry in Sydney. I know. It's massive in Sydney as well, but from what I gather, because it's quite an intimate ecosystem here in Adelaide, it's a very supportive network, and everyone is looking out for everybody else, and everyone else is willing to help and get involved, because people just want to see success generally come out of Adelaide, and it's not as competitive, I think, whereas I think the culture in Sydney, it's a very competitive industry in general, not just in the startup space, but it's just a competitive place. So
it's cutthroat.
Yeah. But there is obviously a lot of opportunity, a lot of investor funds in Sydney. So it is a little bit harder in Adelaide because it's a slightly more conservative market with very specific industries. But yeah, I've found it to be really supportive in general. I've certainly, leveraged off the university's networks.
Sure.
I'm involved in the Uni of Adelaide's Think Lab incubator program, which is actually how I met Jason. So one of our mentors actually, we were doing a bit of a speed dating session pitching our idea, and one of my mentors said, "Stop right there, it's already being done here in Adelaide." So that was actually how I met Jason. Also part of Uni SA's Venture Catalyst program as well. So they have a bit of an incubator space as well. And just, getting involved in a lot of the industry events. It's sort of, I think it's just really supportive and very inclusive. So, yeah.
And I think that's good advice if you do have an idea, even if it's early stages, to get out there and start seeing what's happening out there and start talking to people. I think people are often, because obviously we talk to a lot of really early ideas, so app ideas or a web app idea, but people are really cagey, one, about the idea, and two, haven't really gone out there and seen what's the reality of this situation.
Absolutely. I remember before I'd even sort of started it, when it was certainly just an idea, I wouldn't speak to agencies about it. Because, you just see agencies as, they've got the capability, and how do you know that they're not just going to steal your idea and work on it yourself? So it definitely is a fear of founders. But I mean, I learned very quickly that if I was not going to be talking about my idea, I wasn't going to move forward with the idea, because the more people you talk to, the more people that they can recommend, and you just build your network based around your idea.
Sure.
And so you get introduced to people who can help you to move that forward.
And I think, the idea is obviously critical, but, like you sort of found, like, people have the same ideas all over the place, and people are running with those. It's really the execution that counts, and how deep you can go into it, and how you can, what the end product's actually going to be like, which is a journey. It
definitely is. I mean, as I said before, I had no idea that you could take a photo of something and then make it digital. So it's very important to surround yourself with people that know more than you about what you need to achieve. So for me, it's definitely been very much about building that network. We've got a pretty good board of advisors as well. So the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer for Uber, is on our board.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So he provides a lot of insight into the industry. We've also got a managing director of a meat supplier they supply meat products to Woolworths. Okay. So they provide really good insights as well into that industry, and we're probably looking to get more people like that on board to really guide us, because things like you have to start thinking about pricing and how to get in with, if you're doing business to business transactions, how to get in and meet people and pitch your idea, then not just to, venture capitalists, but now you're pitching your product and your solution to a business and trying to get them to buy it. So it just becomes, it's very much, it's a phased approach, really.
Sure. How did you go about setting up the advisory board?
Just really through connections. Jace, my business partner, he's been sort of doing work in this space for quite some time, being, running a digital agency and having a few of his own little kind of businesses on the side. So he was obviously a great place to start, but also just through the uni's networks as well. So I have a range of mentors just through those programs. And also just kind of reaching out to people. Some people are quite open to, meeting up with people. If they've been successful, they like to then share their success with others to help others become successful. So it's very much sometimes, just going on LinkedIn and, sending a friendly kind of, note to say hi. I'd love to catch up.
It's surprising how often people will respond and how generous, business owners are with their time.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's been so good about Adelaide, because people are very open to that, and probably life is a bit easier here, and so people aren't as overwhelmed and as busy, and probably have more capacity to help people.
Less commute.
Yeah, absolutely. I commute 2 minutes walk to work. It's very handy.
You're not going to get that.
Absolutely not.
You have any questions?
Just going through the startup process. So, I mean, as you mentioned, it's quite a long journey, right? As from forming the idea and then actually getting off the ground. What's your advice on keeping like the passion alive for your project? Because me personally, I have a lot of projects that float around that never get finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
a lot.
Yeah.
I think probably one thing that I have learned is it's really important to be passionate about your idea your idea, because without that passion, you'll definitely lose the drive and motivation, because there are a lot of roadblocks, setbacks. There's emotional hurdles to get over. So you do need that passion and that drive. I don't really know where it came from for me. It was just an intrinsic, crazy thing. I actually call it, oh my gosh, I've had a mental blank. Sorry. I think my mind was going somewhere else. But also don't be too obsessed with your idea, because you need to make smart decisions along the way. And I think sometimes because you're so passionate about something, you just want to see it succeed and you'll do anything to get there. But also make sure that you kind of proceed with caution as well. So just taking time to consider what your options are rather than diving in head first, and making sure that, you have suitable agreements and things in place, to move forward. So stuff like that is just, stay passionate, stay focused. I think for me, focus has been the biggest thing. If I had have, gone back to work and worked full time whilst trying to do this on the side, I probably would have fairly easily lost focus. But because it was my number one priority, I was able to kind of keep that passion alive. But that's probably my biggest word of advice, is just be cautious.
But I mean, it seems like you've done it in an intelligent way, in that you went all in, which I think is kind of important. I mean, I did the same thing when I started my business. Like, I quit my job and I went, right, this is the path. But I also, I didn't take out a bank loan, and I sort of, was, I suppose, conservative in my own personal funds that I put into the business. Yeah,
absolutely. And I was very much the same. Actually, that was the word I was looking for before, ignorance. I don't know if it's passion or ignorance that drives you forward. I think looking back, it's definitely ignorance. But definitely I was pretty conservative about that. I saw my time very much as what I was investing. Sure. So I didn't make money for sort of 7.5 months, and that was a huge financial challenge for me. It certainly taught you to appreciate things a lot. Sure. But, I also then worked out creative ways of how to get funding so that I could eventually take some money through the business as well to support myself, because, it is important to be able to support yourself and investors, and they do understand that. So it's just about disclosing that you will be taking some funding, and sort of finding those. There's heaps of options for financing a business, but I'm not sure debt is the best way for a startup. I think it's pretty hard to get a loan for a startup as well. So
I mean, the climate of a sort of capital investment here in Australia, that people are, risk averse in general. I mean, let alone a bank. But I mean, even going to an angel investor here in Australia, they're not really just throwing out money.
No, they're certainly not.
As they do in America.
Yeah, they're certainly not. So. I think the way we did it, because we were so early stage, we basically formed a syndicate group of investors. Sure. So, people with money were able to put a small amount on the table. So they were still taking a punt, and they recognised that it's a risk, but it wasn't going to really, hurt them or damage them if they didn't get that money back. So that's the way that we sort of did it for our first very early stage round. And it's certainly, once you get the first investor on board, it's really easy to find investors after that to kind of go into it, because they have the security of knowing that someone else thinks it's a good idea. So they're happy to sort of jump in as well.
And as you mentioned previously, you've had some success with grant funding and some sort of competition based funding as well.
Yeah, exactly. And just before I move on from the investor funds, I will also mention that our board advisors are invested into the business as well. So it was very much a matter of kind of selling the idea to them, getting them to invest, and then obviously they want to see the success of the business, and so they're happy to contribute their advice and their knowledge and their wisdom into the business as well. So, but grants are amazing, obviously, because there are, it's a big application process usually. So if it's competitive, there's usually about 3 stages where, you submit your initial application, you usually do a pitch video, then you do a business plan, and then you have to pitch to a panel of investors. So every time you apply for something, you have to rewrite these things. And so it is time consuming, but just make sure you do your research and find out the grants and opportunities that sort of suit your business depending on what space you're in, and just go for it. Because the government's certainly doing all they can to sort of support the startup and innovation space.
How do you find the pitching?
Uni was great for that.
Okay.
My degree was very much focused around all the kind of activities you would do in a startup, and pitching was a main one of that. So, after coming out of uni, I'd already pitched probably about 5 times, and I'd pitched in front of 500 people. I'd done a 1-minute pitch. I'd done 2 panel sort of pitches as well. So that was great experience for me. Kind of.
It is one of those things that gets easier each time you do it.
It is, because you put a lot of time into preparing for the pitch and planning what you want to say. You have a very limited amount of time to get the message across. So you really do need to put a lot of thought and preparation into it, and practice and practice and practice. And that's what I do, because otherwise I just go into freeze mode and panic and can't remember what I'm going to say. So if I'm prepared, then I'm usually pretty confident.
You had a big pitch once, didn't you, Nick?
Yeah, me and a friend of mine, we had an idea for an app, and we went to pitch it at this, what do you call those, what do you call it, incubator?
Incubators,
yeah, one of those, yeah. And one of the judges, or the people who
this was in Thailand, yeah?
Yeah, it was back when I was in Bangkok. One of the judges was, I think he was like an owner of Groupon or something like that. So it's pretty intense.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a really good experience. Yeah.
It's good. It gets you thinking about your business in ways that you may not have thought of before, and in ways that is important to somebody who is going to invest. So it's probably advisable to do a lot of those sort of, weekend competitions, startup competitions, or get involved in incubators, or, do courses around that stuff to really prepare you for the kind of questions that they will ask you and the things that they are interested in. Because then when you actually are going to raise some real funds, you have those questions ready to be answered.
It makes you play devil's advocate a bit as well, because I think a lot of founders are so passionate about their project, and they have blinkers on a little bit.
Absolutely.
Especially around like projections and business models. It's all good to have a great business plan with huge projections, but the first thing investors are going to do is look at the numbers and
and I hate projections. So I'm so uncomfortable with them because it's all assumptions based, and it's literally you can tweak the numbers to how you want them to be. You know, I guess it's important for working out your business model and stuff like that, but yeah, it scares me. But that's the way it's done. And you have to be, you have to at least be able to justify and explain your assumptions and your key metrics. So that's how we set up our forecasts, is based around a set of assumptions, and then we can tweak those assumptions as we go along. So we can see if we're not performing in an area that we thought we would be, how that will affect the numbers, and what we need to do, to counteract that and get us back on base.
And I think from an investor's perspective, if you have that view of it, and you say, well, these are the numbers based on this, but they could change, and
absolutely. And we kind of just give it to them and say, you feel free to tinker with the numbers and see how that affects the forecast.
They can be higher if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Just give us more money to invest in more aggressive marketing, and
done.
Is that a big part of pitching? Having a solid kind of business model behind your idea? Or
yes and no. It depends what stage you're at. I think for us it was sort of, because it was a bit conceptual, people know that the numbers aren't real, so they don't put a huge amount of emphasis on it. But what they do want to know is, what are your sources of income or revenue, and what are your outgoings, and how does that work as you start to build customers. How much does it cost to get a new customer, and how much are they going to bring to you over the lifetime of that customer. So it's sort of working out those kind of things that's more important than the actual numbers themselves, I think.
Yeah.
But again, as you get to, you know, more sophisticated investors, they probably want to know a lot more detail around, you know, how you got to those numbers. And
Sure.
yeah, so we're sort of looking at that at the moment and how to sort of work in a little bit more detail around that. And as we kind of launch and grow, you know, how we can have really good, you know, tracking and processes and review of the financial model as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So what is the plan for launch then? So February or early 2018 launch, and then just a soft launch initially, or you go out fairly hard?
Yeah, I think by the time we kind of go live on Playt.com, we'll be ready to kind of go out pretty hard. So obviously Woolworths deliver nationally, so we'll just have to look at ways to get out there in the media, I would imagine, initially to get, you know, good visibility.
Yep.
Working with online channels as well, how we can kind of utilize their audience to kind of, you know, build brand awareness about what Playt is. So,
Sure.
and yeah, obviously working with the publishers as well. So incentivizing them to, you know, share.
Spread the good word.
Exactly. And so that then obviously that will then create value for them as well. So yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to the release. We'll put something up when it comes up. So it's Playt.
Yes,
.com.
Playt.
Yep.
Playt. Not Platty. When we won the grant, we got Playt and congratulations, Platty. And we all looked at each other. Is that us? So yeah, probably got to do a little bit of work around the pronunciation of Playt.
We're very used to that with our business name. Digital Noir.
Really?
Really? Okay,
People
that
have-
is not your fault.
People have problems pronouncing noir for sure.
Nori.
Noir.
Right.
Oh, well, thanks so much for coming down.
That's okay. Pleasure. Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for having me. That was
No
fun.
worries.